Okay, I guess, Kiana, anyone else in the waiting room, or are we ready to get started? All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julius Dupree. I'm with the Bureau of Justice Assistance. On behalf of the CTAS Outreach Communications team, I'd like to welcome you to our Travel Training and Technical Assistance Coordination meeting. Today we have exciting presentation lined up for you. So we'll get to that very shortly. But given the large number of folks that are participating today, and just so we can save some time on the introduction, I'd like to just ask that you all could put your name and the name of your organization that you're representing in the chat. That way all of our presenters know who's on the call. That would be greatly appreciated. And so I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get started with the federal update section of our agenda. I know as far as updates on the CTAS front is concerned, as you all may know, or as I'm sure you all know, our solicitation, the CTAS FY24 solicitation is out on the street currently, and we've been hosting a series of webinars or applicant webinars to help folks with, understanding the application process and grant and application requirements. We've done a number of them to date. I know we've done some we did one related to budget development. We did a general overview webinar. We also did one focused specifically on Alaska, and we also did we've done the ones for our purpose areas, actually 1 through 4 to date. And today, I think there was a webinar from OBC on purpose area 6. And so we also have some additional webinars prior to March 12th, which is the deadline for the application submission. So if you do have folks that are interested in, hearing about how to complete a budget detail worksheet, or, participate in our final checklist webinar, which we give folks an opportunity to ask Q&A. We also have one regarding a final, what we call the final Just Grant upload Q&A that's going to be coming up. To help folks with technical issues around that. And then, we also have one, purpose area 8 and 9, is they're going to be doing a webinar on February 6th. And so the registration information for that is, Fox Valley has actually been, our TA provider that's been hosting these webinars. So if folks have missed webinars, they are archived. We have recordings of those webinars, and they can be accessed by going to Fox Valley's website, which is www.ncjtc.org/CTAS resources. And I'll probably put that in the chat. But just wanted to give that update, and didn't know if my other federal partners on the line have any updates at this point. At this time, it'd be a great time to provide those updates. Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so I guess we don't have any additional updates. So we can actually go ahead and get into our presentation today. Like I said, we have a really great lineup here. As you all know, in 2021, President Biden actually issued an executive order. It was Executive Order 14053, which is focused on improving public safety and criminal justice for Native Americans and addressing the crisis of missing or murdered Indigenous people. And that executive order is really focusing on addressing the underlying causes of MMIP crisis and fostering long-term improvement to public safety for Native Americans. And as actually part of that executive order, the Attorney General, Department of Justice, has been ordered or tasked with working with the Secretary of the Interior and the heads of other executive departments of agencies to really address this missing and murdered Indigenous people issue. And so, we are delighted to have at least the Department of Justice piece of that today. So you'll be hearing from a number of different representatives. You're going to hear from the U.S. Marshal Service, U.S. Attorney's Executive Office, FBI, as well as the Fox Valley Technical College. And so glad that you all could join today. And I think I will go ahead and hand it off to Lori McPherson with the U.S. Marshal Service. Lori?
Thanks, Julius. I am doing the ever risky thing of trying to share my screen, so hang on a second. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I'm going to start my timer because I know we've got some other folks on the line and I don't want to take up any more than about 5 minutes or so. My name's Lori McPherson. I work as a senior policy advisor over in the Sex Offender Investigations Branch of the United States Marshal Service. And this is just a very brief top-level overview of some of the work the Marshal Service has been doing in this field for the last couple of years. And then I'll hand it off to my colleagues with FBI and Maine Justice. So the MMIP initiative within the United States Marshal Service, the Marshal Service is authorized to assist in missing child investigations through some legislation that passed in 2015, the Justice for Victims of Trafficking Act. As a result of that, our Missing Child Unit was established a few years later, and that unit sits within the Sex Offender Investigations Branch in the Marshal Service. Just structurally, that's where it sits. We do not have primary investigative authority for missing child cases, but we can assist state, tribal, and local law enforcement on request for any case involving a missing child. The Marshal Service participated in Operation Lady Justice from 2019 to 2021. That was the White House Task Force on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons, and has participated on the DOJ MMIP Steering Committee since that time. In-house, one of the things we tried to do was to do our own initiative when it comes around MMIP to see what kind of good work we could do. And in the last fiscal year, in fiscal year 23, we identified some target districts. And when I say districts, I mean federal districts for outreach and possible partnership development with certain federally recognized tribes, depending on who might be interested. As it turns out, we only had one tribe take us up on that offer, but it's been a great partnership with Yurok tribe since fall of 2022. I've been out there a number of different times to speak with different representatives from Yurok. We've had other Marshal Service personnel up to speak to Yurok tribal folks as well. And in fiscal year 24, the work is continuing, but we're moving towards a more operational focus. And what that means for us is that we're focusing more on law enforcement to law enforcement, making sure that our communication networks with tribal, local, and state law enforcement are clear so that when a kid does go missing, we can jump right into action. And we've had a decent amount of success with that. We've had at least 4 different cases in the last year or so where we've been able to assist in recovering or locating missing Native American kids. One as recently as about a week or 2 ago. So we're really proud of that work. We defer to the tribes when it comes to press on those cases because we don't want to get ahead of the communities when it comes to that. And in all of those cases, the tribes have chosen just to focus on reintegrating the child into the community. And so we haven't been very public about that, but we have been doing good work about it. Another thing we do is data analysis and work, and I'll spend the last minute or so talking about this. This is an example just of a slide that we've pulled together on MMIP data that's out there. That's one of the big questions that's always been asked about, is what's the actual size and scope of this problem. And so we're also doing some analytical work to try to figure that out. This is just an example pulled from NCIC numbers. The dark blue is American Indian Alaska Native kids under 18 reported missing, and then 18 and over. In addition, I actually worked with one of my old colleagues at the SMART office to do a law review article that dove deep into analyzing all of the data around missing Indigenous kids, including looking at public health data around it. And it's available. I can send a copy, Julius, I can send a copy to you for distribution to the group. It's also, you can just Google it online. It was published in Seattle University Law Review a couple of months ago. And the thesis of the article is what I'll leave you with, and this is kind of what drives us at the Marshal Service. The thesis of the article is that it's possible to reduce the number of American Indian Alaska Native persons who go missing, and to reduce the amount of time that they are gone. That was the thesis of the article. That's what guides our work in the Marshal Service. You know, from the law enforcement side, we're trying to reduce the amount of time that they're gone once they go missing, but we're also keeping our eyes on the research to try to point preventative measures in the right direction. So with that, there's my contact information. I will, Julius, I'll also send you this brief little PowerPoint. I think that's right at 5 minutes. And so I'm gonna just pat myself on the back for not taking too much longer than that and hand it over to the next presenter.
Hi, this is Elliot White with the FBI out of FBI headquarters, the Indian Country and International Violent Crime Unit. Thanks for having me today. I'm just going to give everybody kind of a brief update on what we did last year to address MMIP issues as it relates to Indian Country. Just so everybody knows, the Indian Country International Violent Crime Unit is the unit that has program management responsibility over the FBI's criminal program as it relates to Indian Country. So last year, our unit was active participant as subject matter experts with much of what happened with the Not Invisible Act Commission. And we also sit on the Deputy Attorney General's MMIP Steering Commission. So we are regular participants in that as well. Some updates. Last year, we added to our Safe Trails Task Force program, which is our program that makes task force officers from state, local, and our tribal partners and brings them together with the FBI to work together in our Indian Country locations. Last year, we increased our programs up to our 25th program by adding a task force out of Boston that covers the Mashpee Wampanoag Reservation. Last year as well, we expanded our relationship with the BIA's Missing and Murdered Unit. We embedded a program analyst from MMU into the Indian Country Unit, and that person sits in our Albuquerque field office, and they are now working directly with us and receiving all of our case information so that there's a much thorough deconfliction and working together between ourselves and MMU. So we're really happy with the way that relationship is going. It has already been paying off, and we're hoping it continues as we go forward. I think the last update that I have for everybody is last year, we were lucky enough to get additional funding through the reauthorization of VAWA, and we used those funding to surge quite a bunch of resources to 10 different field offices last year for the last quarter. So during FY23 from September to July, or sorry, from July through the end of September, we sent an additional 30 agents who would not normally be in our Indian country program out to 10 different field offices and an additional 7 intel personnel to assist them. And the focus of the surge, it was called Operation Not Forgotten, was to bring our unresolved cases that we had to resolution. We have a significant amount of those, and many of those involve violence against women and children. And the purpose was to surge those resources to help the agents who are currently working them get some of those cases resolved. We had some great success with that. Our resources helped with over 200 pending and new investigations while they were there. We had great success with identifying and locating children that we didn't have before who were victims. And overall was a great success and a significant help for the resources that are currently in the field. We do plan to do that again this year, although it's just too early to tell what resources we'll have because we don't have a budget yet. But that is the plan going forward, is to continue that operation in the second half of this year. That is all the updates I have. Thank you for your time.
Hey, everybody, and Petuwashte. I'm Marlis Big Eagle. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here today. I have been working at the Executive Office for U.S. Attorneys in Washington, D.C. I've been hired as the Department of Justice First National Native American Outreach Services Liaison at the Executive Office. As Julia said, this position was created as part of the President's Executive Order on improving public safety and criminal justice for Native Americans and addressing the crisis of missing or murdered Indigenous persons. One of the duties of this position is to assist with recommendations on how the department can improve the response to this crisis. Since I started this position, I've been able to hear directly from both tribal leaders and family members of the missing and murdered. I really want to assure that victims' voices continue to be heard. I'll be working to improve coordination with victims' families, law enforcement, victims' families, and U.S. attorneys' offices. That will be incorporating some of those Indigenous traditions and cultural practices into DOJ's policy. I think this will help build trust with tribal communities by honoring some of those cultural norms. We're going to be supporting those culturally based trauma-informed victim services that are currently in place already in the field. I plan to work closely with BIA's MMU Victim Specialist Program and participating with the MMIP Steering Committee at DOJ. Overall, I really just want to be an additional resource for victims and their families in places that have very few resources already. So I'm very excited to also be working closely with Deidre Onstad. She is spearheading the Department of Justice Regional MMIP Outreach Program. And so I just wanted to briefly give you an introduction, and then I'll go ahead and turn it over to Deidre. And thank you again so much for having me here today.
Thank you, Marlis, and thank you all for taking time to hear about the department's initiatives surrounding the MMIP crisis. As Marlis indicated, I am the program coordinator for the newly created MMIP Regional Outreach Program that is operated through the Executive Office for United States Attorneys. As some of you may recall, back in 2019 and 2020, the Department of Justice announced a contract MMIP coordinator program in conjunction with Operation Lady Justice, which had been announced. There were 11 MMIP coordinators placed throughout 11 different districts and states for approximately a year to 2 years. As the MMIP Steering Committee began operating in 2022, we at EOUSA realized that there was a need and that there was a further commitment that needed to be made with respect to the coordinator program. Out of the discussions through the MMIP Steering Committee, we at EOUSA created with the USAO community, the United States Attorney's Office community, the MMIP Regional Outreach Program. The MMIP Regional Outreach Program is intended to provide experienced and specialized support to the United States Attorney's offices to address and combat the issues of MMIP, including unresolved cases and MMIP-related crimes. The goal of the program will be that there will be 5 regions, and each throughout Indian country. Those 5 regions have been named the Northwest region, the Southwest region, the Great Plains region, the Great Lakes region, and the Southeast region. There will be a regional coordinator and a regional AUSA in each of those regions, where they will have a home district, but will do work throughout their region. Currently, individuals are being onboarded into the program. Some may ask, what will they be doing? And it really falls into 3 buckets of what the program endeavors to do to help in the MMIP realm. First, we want to provide specialized support to assist in resolving unsolved or unresolved cold cases. And we recognize that it takes time to work through cold cases and to work with the MMU and with the FBI in handling those cases. And so the AUSAs will provide that specialized support. Additionally, there's outreach that's required. And in each of the regions, which has already begun in the regions that have coordinators and AUSAs, there's outreach to federal, tribal, state, and local partners to branch or to bridge the communication gaps that are oftentimes occurring between jurisdictions as cases arise. And so the regional outreach program is beginning to develop regional databases and regional information with respect to organizations. The program is not only reaching out to federal, tribal, state, and local law enforcement, but also victim and MMIP-related governmental and non-governmental organizations and urban Indian organizations to ensure that there's an understanding of what resources and roles and services that the MMIP Regional Outreach Program can provide, but also to develop a regional resources list so that there's better communication and more prompt communication when either a missing or murdered case arises. The regional coordinators and the AUSAs will work with the USAO community to help refine Savannah's Act guidelines, which have been created and have been in place since April of 2022. There's a recognition that those Savannah's Act guidelines can be modified or refined to ensure that they are living documents rather than just a guideline that is put on a shelf. Additionally, the regional outreach program will work through will work with tribal communities and work through the U.S. Attorney's offices to help in assisting create tribal community response plans as tribes request them. This program is not intended to supplant USAO community members like tribal liaisons and Indian country prosecutors. Rather, it's meant to complement not only on a local district level, but also on a regional and national level. As Marlis indicated, Marlis and I work closely together, and she will work closely with the program. We're also working in that 3rd prong. So we've covered cases, outreach, but we're also going to be looking at training. We recognize in meeting with Leslie Hagan, the National Indian Country Training Coordinator, that there are needs that are sometimes not being met with respect to webinars, and that there's more of a need for regional or localized training. And currently, Leslie and I are working together along with the team members that are onboarded to develop a training plan and work in collaboration with tribal, federal, state, and local partners to determine what training needs may be better met in a regional basis or a localized basis rather than through webinars or through the NAC. And so we're working on that now. We recognize that we're just getting going, but we are trying to ensure that we have a plan in place that we can accomplish to assist not only the USAO community to ensure that the needs are being met for the USAO community, but also the tribal communities with which we serve.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janelle Rasmussen. Thank you to Julius and his team for inviting us to be here to talk a little bit today about the work that we're doing with Amber Alert in Indian Country. Just to share some brief information for those of you who aren't familiar with the Amber Alert in Indian Country program. It was developed after the abduction and murder of Amber Hagerman from the Navajo Nation. I'm sorry, from Ashland Mike from the Navajo Nation. We expanded the Amber Alert Act to include Amber Alert in Indian Country through the Ashland Mike Amber Alert in Indian Country Act of 2018. And what that does is to allow us to provide training and technical assistance to the tribes to better coordinate between the tribes and the states on implementation of Amber Alert programs and efforts there, also allowing them to create individual Amber Alert plans. I wanted to touch on a couple of different areas today. First of it being implementation efforts and the work that we're doing there. We have been doing outreach with all of the tribes, the federally recognized tribes in the US, to implement these plans, either through contacting them or having connections like our partners on this call who've helped with them contacting us and doing this work. We're providing opportunities to develop strategic plans for implementation with the tribal communities. We're holding meetings with key stakeholders, and we're conducting regional outreach meetings where we bring tribes together from different regions throughout the US. We're also working on community engagement workshops, and many of you who have met or know Pamela Foster, Ashland's mother, she works with us on doing this community engagement and community outreach by sharing Ashland's story. I want to talk about the toolkits that we're providing through Amber and Indian Country and also the training that we're doing. And I also wanted to mention the Amber Alert in Indian Country Symposium that will be occurring at the larger Amber Alert Symposium that's coming up, and invite you all to attend if you're not already attending. That is taking place February 27th and 28th in New Orleans. We have an entire tribal training track where we are going to be doing a breakout regional session with our Amber Alert in Indian Country program manager and all of the attendees that are there from Indian Country to talk about issues that are being that are occurring in Indian Country when it comes to missing persons cases. And also Marlis will be there as well to provide some updates and comments. And so we're looking forward to that event and would love for you to attend if you are available. I next wanted to mention the toolkit work that we're doing. You may have heard about the toolkits that are being sent out to Indian Country to help in locating missing persons. The Amber Alert in Indian Country funding allowed us to set aside some money to help the tribes with technology issues that were occurring throughout COVID. And so you'll see in the upper left-hand corner here, we have put together a case that provides a number of different items that investigators in Indian Country have told us are important to use or utilize in a missing persons case, anywhere from a computer to a headset to cameras. One of the things that we heard from an investigator in the field is that they were out and trying to get a picture of a missing child, and that family did not want to give up that picture because they didn't have many of their child. And so we've included in these kits a portable scanner. So investigators are out in the field, they can take that picture, scan it right in, send it out to the public or through an Amber Alert, and they can give that picture right back to the family. So these kits are providing tools to law enforcement that they did not have before. So far, we've given out 135 kits to tribal law enforcement agencies, and we would like your help. If you're aware of any agencies who could find any of these tools helpful, we'd like to share a kit with them as well. Also, we have some funding for some additional equipment that will be available through October 1st, purchasing items for tribal law enforcement agencies like drones or other devices, night vision goggles, things like that, that they may use in a search for a missing person, that could benefit their case. Lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about the training that we're doing in Indian Country. We have a number of different courses that are offered through the Amber Alert in Indian Country program. We're working on a child abduction tabletop exercise where we bring in community members, law enforcement, everyone who would partner if there was a missing persons case to put information out to the public and investigate and solve that case. We do those upon request. We also do community response to missing and exploited children in Indian Country, and then missing children investigations in Indian Country. And these classes are all developed to be culturally sensitive, whether it be a search, initial response by an investigator or officer, and have been developed with key tribal law enforcement agencies that have had these cases and these issues in the past. This training is all available free at no cost to anyone who wants to attend, whether it be law enforcement or partners within law enforcement. And we really appreciate any help that you can give in getting the word out on this training or any of the technical assistance areas that we can partner on. With that, we have a couple of resources that are available on our Amber and Indian Country website that are available to law enforcement, the public, or anybody who could find them useful. And they are an investigative checklist for law enforcement when responding to missing persons cases. We have Amber and Indian Country in the news, which talks about a lot of active missing persons cases that are out there and the work that's being done to help find those that are missing. We also have all of our free training listed on there for tribal agencies and others to attend. And then there are links to all of our partners, and many of you are included in that. So thank you for the time today to share that information. My contact, along with all of our information, is available on amberadvocate.com, and we're happy to help in any way that we can. Thank you.
Great, thank you all. That was a lot of great information, and so encouraging to hear so much good work is being done in this area. It seems like we have, I know we have at least one question in the chat. I know that came from Justine early on, and if this was for the federal presenters, it asked, is there a mechanism to reach the Marshal's office and the FBI at the time of critical incident, or do they reach out to each individual office? And I don't know who wants to take that.
I can take it from the Marshal Service side, and I did a little bit of a response in the chat. Marshal Service and FBI, at least my understanding is that we're pretty good about deconflicting with each other on cases, and local relationships tend to be pretty good. So if there's ever a missing child case that you'd like to request Marshal Service assistance on, we've got a flyer on how law enforcement can do that. It has to come through a law enforcement agency. The child has to be entered into NCIC before we can take any action. And I couldn't get the one pager to upload. So Julius, that's what I'm going to send you for distribution. We also always recommend that if there's a missing child case, that you reach out to NCMEC and call 1-800-THE-LOST and get that case get that intake process done with them, because NCMEC's resources and reach on missing child cases is extraordinary. So that's the way the Marshal Service side works. I don't know if FBI wants to chime in with anything else.
SSA Elliott is, I don't know if he wants to add anything there.
I think he had to drop, Julius.
Okay. All right. Okay, but thank you for that, Lori. That was very helpful, and maybe we can somehow get that information from, get his response to that and get it out to the group. I see another question here in the chat from, I believe it's from Judge Jones. Is there a standard definition of missing under federal law as far as how long the person has, as far as how long the person has not been heard from, or do we defer to tribal or state law on that?
I can jump in on that, but Deidre, do you want to take that one?
We can maybe both answer it. At this
Okay.
point in time, there is no official definition for a missing person. Typically, it's going to just be an examination of what can be required for entry into NCIC, and then state and tribal laws, providing a general understanding. But it's typically when someone either voluntarily or involuntarily cannot be located because their whereabouts are unknown. And I don't think that really helps, because I think you're asking, if I understand your question, if there's a time or what is most appropriate for when someone's deemed to be missing. And unfortunately, it's on a fact by fact, circumstance by circumstance basis now. And that's one of the things I know that we've had a lot of discussion within the MMIP Regional Outreach Program, talking about definitions for missing person, or when a case, the other conversation we routinely have is when is a case unresolved or cold, that requires additional attention. So we're working on all of those definitions right now.
Great,
And I'll
thank you,
chime in,
Deidre.
I'll chime in on
Second,
the timing section of it. There's a misconception out there in some places. I mean, we can't figure out exactly where, but there is a misconception that a child or a person has to be missing for 24 hours or 48 hours before law enforcement will take a report. On the federal level, that's just not the case. That's not true. In fact, a missing child is required to be entered into NCIC. I think it's within 24 hours of them being reported missing. And so the minimum time is a minute. I mean, if you've got a kid who is not where they're supposed to be, and and you're concerned about their well-being for whatever reason, that's enough. That's enough to report that kid missing, at least under federal law. And then, states will have different criteria, and you'll enter them differently into NCIC, but there's no minimum amount of time.
Thank you. Judge Jones, did that answer your question, or do you have any follow-up?
That's real helpful. Thanks, Julius.
Thank you. And I see Betsy Griffith has a hand up. She's with Associate Deputy Director with BJA. Betsy?
Thank you, Julius. I appreciate it. I just a quick question. It's good to see everybody, and Lori in particular. I appreciate the article you put together. And I think, a lot of times, obviously there's a lot of people who go missing, but then come back, a large percentage of them. Can you talk a little bit about, is that the case with youth, or the percentage of folks who maybe go missing and come back comparable to adults, or are there higher rates of kids that in fact remain missing, or unfortunately may ultimately have been murdered? So can you just give us a little context of how that data might be different for youth versus adults?
Well, the short answer is I don't know, but I'll tell you what I do know. So the short answer is that I don't know the breakdown between analyzing that data for folks who went missing after they turned 18 versus before they turned 18. I just don't have that. What we do know is that, and I don't have the article in front of me, but we do know that the longer, especially a kid stays missing, because that's our bailiwick, and this would apply the same to young adults. The longer a kid stays missing, the higher risk they're going to be to fall victim to things they did not plan on doing when they left the house. And so it's really that focus on the quicker we can get a kid back, the less damage that's going to be done to that kid out on the streets or in a vulnerable situation. So There is HHS did an Inspector General investigation into children who went missing from care, and they were able to quantify the duration of time that those kids were missing. And it was, I want to say it was somewhere around 30 days or something like that. Like, and that's a long time, like that's, even if they're repeat runaways, but you can look at their report to find it, but it can be difficult to quantify because you have to get that follow-up, and that can be very hard to do. Hey,
Thank you.
Julius,
That's helpful. I don't know if you have anything else, Julius.
back to you,
Julius,
Julie.
you might be double muted, Julius. Well, while Julius figures out his audio, because Julius, we can't hear you, let's go back to a different question in the chat from Justine. Do any of you know if tribal nations are defining missing in their own codes? And does anyone have an example to share?
I do not know of any tribal nations that are defining missing at this point in time in their own tribal codes. However, I do know that the tribal community response plans, depending upon how they're being developed through each tribal community, they will have a definition of missing or a general definition, kind of what I provided, where it's fact specific and will utilize that to start to implement a tribal community response plan if there is someone that is missing.
Awesome, thank you. Any of our other speakers have an answer to that?
I can also share that the Amber Alert plans that are being put together by the tribes, they do include in there a specific set of criteria for those that are missing. And so once that criteria is met, that information is sent out to the public. And oftentimes they do define what missing is through that criteria.
Great, thank you so much. Last call, any of our other speakers have an answer? Lori did add some data into the chat for those who are interested in reading that. Any other questions for any of our speakers? All right, I'm going to give Julius one last call to see if he can hear us and wants to wrap this up. Otherwise, I will wrap it up for us.
Hello, Kiana, can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Kiana?
Hi, Julius.
Sorry about that. Thanks.
No problem.
So it sounds like I see something else in the chat here from Matt Lazarkowski with the COPS office. He did provide Bay Mills is I guess in they find missing in this plan here. So if you all want to maybe copy and paste or copy that from the chat, that might be helpful as well. Okay. Yeah, thank you to our presenters today, and thank you for all the folks that attended. That this was very informative. At this point, I think that we want to just kind of go into our wrap up pretty much. And so we as we always ask, if you have any requests or you would like to see any offices or presenters on this forum, please let us know, and we'll try to make those accommodations. We always we've gotten your input before, and that has basically informed us or helped us basically with reaching out to folks to participate in these sessions. Our next meeting is actually April 18th. So, definitely looking forward to hearing from you all. And like I said, in the interim, if you have any suggestions, please forward that on. But I guess unless there's anything else, I'm sorry, Matt Lazarkowski also wanted to add some information here around the COP recently released a e-learning course, effective multi-jurisdictional collaboration in missing or murdered Indigenous persons cases. And so he provides a link here to that. And I think this is a lot of helpful information. And I think, Kiana, we can try to, maybe hopefully send those links as part of the notes for this session. Okay, that would be great. And then Betsy also puts a note in here around BJA funding the state of Washington under the Emmett Till to fund cold case homicides involving Native Americans. I think that's great information as well. Betsy, did you want to kind of come off and maybe talk a little bit about that before we close out? Because I think that's a very important development, Betsy, if you're still on.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this project. We would love to see tribes apply as well for this funding. It's been around for a couple of years. It allows us to support the investigation, prosecution, and related support for stakeholders, which we interpret very, very broadly for cases and where race could be implicated. Again, we try to interpret this very broadly. And the one restriction we have is it is only involving cases that happened prior to 1980. So anything 1979 and older. The state of Washington, through the Attorney General's office, has conducted 25 listening sessions across the state with tribes, and they're going to be working with those tribes and making, in some cases, subawards to them to be able to work cases, but also just to be able to, in some cases where the cases might not be actionable, we might not be able to prosecute it, we could still close the cases. But a lot of the work is really about building relationships and acknowledging the history and trying to bring that, justice for tribes. So if folks are interested, I'm happy. Our solicitation will be coming out on that in the next couple of months, assuming we get funding again this year. We do not have like a huge appetite for that program. So I would love to see either more states or more tribes apply for that work. So I just wanted to kind of share that as a resource.
Great, thank you, Betsy. That's very helpful. I see Justine has something in the chat here. Judge Jones says thanks to everyone, and good to see you, Marlon. Janelle, here's a question for Janelle. How do tribes request a drone? Does that include training? Janelle, are you still on to be able to answer that?
Yeah, Julius, I'm still on. Any requests for equipment to respond to missing persons cases, just contact our Amber and Indian Country office. It's on our website, and we just need basically a bid on the equipment, and we'll work with the tribe directly on purchasing that.
Great, thank you, Janelle, and appreciate that. And I see Labrita, thanks to the informative presenters for the informative presentations. And so yeah, thank you all. I guess unless there's anything else, we will go ahead and end a little early today. And again, thank you to all of our presenters. Thank you for the attendees for participating, and we'll talk to you in April. Thanks so much.
Take care, everyone.